It is the Anfield Wrap. It is a pleasure to be with you after Liverpool have beaten West Ham United by 3-1 and put in what we can describe as another good performance, a building block. More on that to come in a second or two. I've got Josh Williams, Josh Sexton and Neil Docking. 2 Joshes, 2 Neils. Feels like that's some sort of statistical anomaly that we're going to have to analyse further. But this show is brought to you in conjunction with Green King. We're sponsored by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game. The Green King Sports venues are showing every televised Liverpool fixture over the course of the season. So instead of turning to the internet for a dodgy stream, why don't you get together with people? It's the best way to enjoy football. I'll say it every single day. The game only makes sense in a social setting. Get yourself down to your local Green King pub and get close to the action. There's an Instagram page, Green King Sport, where you can, I think this week, you've got me and John speaking about the Carabao Cup and the forthcoming game against Leicester. I'll tell you what, we did that some time ago. But nothing's changed, don't you worry at all. That content will still be as fresh as it was the day in which it was recorded. There as well, there's deals and competitions throughout the season. If you get them a follow, you won't just be the first to know about all this. You're also helping the Anfield Wrap, and that's very, very kind of you indeed. You're helping by listening as well, and hopefully you're enjoying things by virtue of listening, because if you're not enjoying this right now, you're not going to enjoy anything. West Ham are a really good confident side. We'll talk a little bit about them, I think, as it wears on, because it's important. Neil Docking, I think, to emphasise their quality. But as I said before, the win, the 3-1, it feels like another building block where this season's concerned.
Definitely. I think it might be the best West Ham team I've ever seen, which seems like a bold statement, but I was thinking about it yesterday. It's probably the best West Ham side in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Certainly since I've been going the match, without a doubt. They've got quality all over the pitch. They're so big, so strong, so up for a fight. They've obviously got the confidence from getting a trophy in the bag. Everyone looks so secure. They've held on to the main man, Paqueta. Whatever the reason for that may be, he's still playing for them. And he's so good. And I was concerned going into the game yesterday. I thought it was a real test, especially if us hadn't played midweek. They've had the time to focus on the game. Obviously, they've been in Europe too. But I just thought we struggled at first, but we worked our way back into the game, and then we really asserted ourselves. And our quality in attack means we're always going to create chances. We definitely, there's still work, there's improvements you can see. Defensively, we're giving up too many chances ourselves. At times, I don't think we're doing enough to stop the cross, to stop the ball coming in. That was my concern, and we did ride our luck. And I think you can say in a number of games this season, we have ridden our luck. We've been fortunate, but then at times, if you've got the best goalkeeper in the world, then he will make saves that win you points. You can point to 2 or 3 games this season where Allister has played a key role in us getting 3 points. There was another example yesterday. But the way we fought back, took the lead, and then even when we conceded a goal, conceded an equaliser, we didn't drop. In second half, I thought we were the dominant side and ran out deserved winners.
They were deserved winners against what is a good side. Josh, I think what Neil's alluding to, though, to an extent there is not dissimilar to maybe the game against Wolves, where the Mateus Cunha miss feels like it's a bit of a defining moment. The Bowen, it's not a miss in that he gets the header on target, but he'll feel as though he should do better with it. That said, he does brilliantly with his first header, and as we all know, headers are not as valuable chances as people think they are. Your heart's in your mouth, but the cold, hard numbers suggest they don't always go in. Certainly the one he actually scores from the first one. But that said, it does feel like another turning point where Liverpool have ever so slightly got away with one, but have then gone up the other end and demonstrated their superiority.
Yeah, it felt like a very on-brand game so far for the season, I think, in terms of the way it transpired, the way Liverpool performed, the way we ultimately ended up getting a result. I think we started relatively slowly, as we have done in many games this season. We didn't concede first, crucially, but we did start relatively slowly. But then just gradually throughout the course of the game, for the most part, our attacking firepower gets us out of jail. We get more of a foothold on the game, start controlling proceedings a little bit more, and whether that's just through better decisions as the game goes on, or better physicality or whatever, or just, again, more firepower and the opposition maybe getting a little bit more.
It's a bit pot A, pot B and pot C, I think. Yeah. I think there's the fit, and Liverpool look fitter and stronger. They begin to make decisions and look after the ball better, which means the opposition are charging around, which means that they're losing their edge. And then when Liverpool can work it into the front players have got such unbelievable quality. I think it is one of those things where you're going, well, is it this? But it's actually, it's a bit of this one, and a bit of this one, all allied together.
Yeah, well, I think if you go back to the Villa game, for example, which I think has been our best performance so far, we scored an early goal in that game and we go ahead. And once we go ahead, I think it changes the way in which you approach the game, and you're no longer forcing it. You can control things a little bit better. And I think against West Ham, again, we took the lead. At no point in the game we're behind or anything like that. We weren't really level for particularly long. So it feels like when Liverpool gain a lead and when Liverpool, get ahead and things like that, we can control the game a little bit better, and maybe that kind of comes towards the end of the game. But at the start of the game, I don't know what it is lately, we just seem to be a little bit off it. But overall, firepower-wise and strength-wise, we seem to be just too much for a lot of teams to contain for 90 minutes, and it gets to a point where we end up just getting over the line.
It's, to me, there's... why I found the equaliser frustrating, Josh, was that I think Liverpool had the difficult start. Then they played the way and they got ahead, and they were the better side. And I actually think that by sort of 35, I thought West Ham looked knackered. I thought they looked like, God, this is going to be a day. And then we let them back in. We don't, I think Salah drags one wide when he could take the ball on and do something a little bit different with it. And then they go up the other end. They have the one corner, which always felt, I think it was the one that ricochets off Alisson's head. Felt a bit messy. The corner, we cleared it, but then they score from the breakdown after the corner. My point, though, is more importantly, really, I was frustrated with it because I thought we'd done the West Ham legs in. And then the Bowen miss comes, and then about 2 minutes later, it's 60. So I thought in the first half, West Ham were knackered by about 35. In the second half, West Ham were knackered by about 60. And in both instances, at least the second time, Liverpool take advantage of that tiredness. But that's part of what this team's able to do, which is to wear sides down over the course of halves.
Yeah, and I thought the first half was really interesting in the sense that you've put down on the agenda that West Ham know what a West Ham goal looks like, and they know what a West Ham chance looks like as well, and they're able to, I think one of the ways in which they're really good is they're able to give themselves encouragement in games, especially when it feels like maybe the game is starting to slip away from them. And you're right to say that on about 35, it did feel like that, and it was sort of interesting in the sense that this wasn't a Liverpool start to the game in the way the Wolves one was, where it just felt like Wolves surprised Liverpool, really. It's this surprised Liverpool, how direct they were, surprised Liverpool just by how good Pedro Neto was in that game as well. It didn't feel like that in this one. I think there was almost like Liverpool were going to feel like whatever West Ham were going to throw at them, and West Ham just established a foothold in the game quite early, and then Liverpool go and get their goal first and almost give themselves a foothold back. But you still see from that point West Ham chances, and that's where, as Neil says before, the goalkeeper comes up trumps for Liverpool in that moment. But you always feel like there's an ability with this Liverpool side at the moment to sort of flip a switch, and it feels like the manager has really nailed that ability to do that at half time in particular. But I just think there's so much that Liverpool changed from the first half to the second half without even, it's not even the subs in this one. It feels like in every other game it's been about the subs and things. In this one there's just a big mentality shift, which as I say, I think is interesting because of the way in which they approach it mentally from the start of the game.
There's, Josh, this isn't the first time this has happened this season. I had a little look this morning on StatsBomb at the race chart and the cumulative expected goals, and Liverpool's about 3.09 versus West Ham 0.91, something like that off the top of my head, 3-1. And that comes through in the Wolves. When you actually look at the numbers of the Wolves game, forget what it felt like, and it's slightly skewed by virtue that Acuna never has the shot, so the shot never counts, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But you look at that one, 3-1. The Villa one, 3-0. Like, the extent to which Liverpool are actually sticking relatively close to those numbers, I think, is striking. But it also speaks to what's been happening over the course of these games. Whilst there is, for us, a fair bit of heart in mouth, the reality on the ground is that, even when you feel like West Ham are doing a little bit for 5 minutes, they're not always getting really good quality chances away. What they are doing is making the most of the chances they do get with good excellence from especially Bowen, but a couple of other players. But I think it's noticeable that Liverpool repeatedly are approximately where the numbers think they should be, even if we feel at times a bit like, oh, we got away with that there and we had to ride our luck here. The reality is that if we are riding our luck, we're riding our luck into a good place, not just into a lucky place.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it earlier in terms of the chances that West Ham created. A lot of them did seem to be headers. They were kind of aerial balls into the box, and they are just generally trickier to convert. But yeah, in terms of the XG and that, if you're posting 3.1 in attack alone, every game, mate, you win leagues. That's like serious attacking performance, that. And on the defensive side, because you're only really giving away headers, 0.9 is not a great deal to give away, so you're gonna win comfortably if they're your kind of performance numbers attached to most games. And I think this is what's interesting, because I said to you on the way in, like I think it's difficult for me personally so far to determine just how good this Liverpool team is in terms of the level and that. And like an example I'd use is, say for example we were in the Champions League, I'd have no idea yet whether we can actually win that. I'd think there's a chance we could, but I don't know if we're on that level yet. But then you couple in them numbers with the fact that we've only dropped 2 points so far, and we're still very much getting to grips with lots of things. It feels like there's still plenty to iron out. We've had red cards in 2 games. Arguably I keep calling him the architect of this system in Trent has missed 2 games now. McAllister is not necessarily a lone six, and he's been playing as that for in a lot of games and things. We've had a few injuries, 1 or 2 Curtis Jones has missed minutes and things like that, and we're still just kind of. I think we're unbeaten in 18, is it now?
Yeah.
18 in all competitions. So it bodes really, really well, and it could be a case of like quietly, like despite us having these maybe scars from the previous season, it could be a case of quietly like Liverpool are building towards being this really dominant, elite team once again, like quite quickly.
The trying to judge where we are, Neil, I think it's a really interesting point in that now the Chelsea draw, and I still think at the end of the season it will look like a good point, but right now it doesn't, if we're honest about it, because they look such a mess. Chelsea, certainly in terms of just being able to get their way through a football match, they don't look that capable of it. But that said, we've got some other results in there in good places. West Ham, so the Antonio comments, and I was annoyed it wasn't 3-1 when he went off, because we could have really had a laugh with it. But at 2-1, I think we were all right to be a bit more, the ground didn't do it. But I think the Antonio comments actually are what you said before about how good West Ham are, because he's training every day, and I think they've just won the European trophy, and he's going to train. He thinks, we're boss. We are absolutely brilliant, and there's a really strong argument West Ham could be one of the best 20 teams in Europe, which is mad given the fact that they'll probably finish 7th, 8th or 9th in the Premier League. But you can understand how if you're Mikel Antonio, you're looking around the train, you do a day's training, you're going, Paqueta's unreal, Bowen's such a talent, Zuma's this good, I've got Ward-Prowse.
I was going to say Ward-Prowse's delivery.
Yeah, and I can see how, and that's why I think it is difficult to judge, because Villa are a really good side as well, and we sweep them aside 3-0 earlier in the season. What are Newcastle at the minute? It all feels skewed by oddnesses. I think it is difficult to tell, isn't it? It is difficult to tell precisely where we are at this moment in time, which is odd given what the table's saying and also where the season's up to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of points there. Firstly, people used to say stats were boring. When Josh is talking about XG equating to winning leagues, I feel my heart rate and the pulse.
You don't want to know about what cities are saying. let me just put that to you.
All right, okay. Dampen it back down. On the Antonio point, I think he's every right to be bullish. I just think don't say it publicly. Don't say it on a podcast. It's just stupid.
You've got to be careful what you say on podcasts.
Indeed you have. It's dressing room wall stuff, all the cliches. It's daft. The Newcastle win a couple of weeks ago, in a few weeks' time, that might look like an absolutely fantastic result. I mean, I already think it is, but I'm sure now when their fixtures are eased, they're going to accumulate some points and it's going to look better by the week. The Chelsea one, obviously, we're going to be disappointed about it because they're an absolute shambles. But first game, new manager, before all the injuries set in, I still think, as you said, it was a good point. We've gone into this season with such low expectations, really, given the abundance of quality at our disposal because of how last season panned out, how frustrating it was, just how poor we were. But 16 games unbeaten now, isn't it, in all competitions? If you stretch back into last season,
that's 18. I think
18.
Is it 18? Sorry, in all comps. Is it 16 in the league, perhaps?
Yeah.
That momentum is huge, and the quality and depth on the bench, the way we're able to mix it up, midweek, completely rotate 11 players in. There's so much to be confident about, and the quality we're showing in midfield is just vast. I'm in awe of Szoboszlai. I know we're going to get onto him, but I'm in awe of him. And so I was just going to say that when we know where we are, obviously our next 2 games coming up, Tottenham away, Brighton away, it's going to answer a lot of questions of where we are.
Yeah.
Are we genuinely chasing Manchester City, or are we going to slip back into the pack? Or are we chasing second, essentially? But this midfield, I just can't wait to see them tested, in those games, because so far they've been the match of everyone we've played.
Last thing on it, Josh, before we get into the individual performances, the other thing I just to sort of say is I thought it was just a great game of football. Yeah. I think you can lose that sometimes in your desperation to see Liverpool win, but I was just some of the quality on show from both sets of players. There was a decent flow to the game. There wasn't a ton of time wasting. I think they felt like that wasn't in their interest. It wasn't in ours. I think their approach is worthy of being complimented, because it would have been the easiest thing in the world for them to sit in. But I think when you are training every day and you feel good, you don't want to turn up to it and feel as... And also, and this is where I do wonder whether or not our press at the minute, whether or not there's a bit of an attitude of you can get at them, If you start fast, you can get at them and you can get something from them, if that added to it as well. But it was just a great game of football.
Yeah, and I'd actually love to hear Mikel Antonio's thoughts after the game, to be honest, in the sense that we're all sat here as Liverpool fans and we've seen what Liverpool did towards the back end of last season. We've seen the way they've started this season, and even we're not quite sure where Liverpool land. And I'd be interested to speak to him and say, like, what do you reckon after playing against them? How good do you think they are now? Because I think there's every chance that this Liverpool side is a really, really good football team, and there's something that all feels a little bit 13-14 about about this start to the season, and that's not me sort of trying to preempt where it ends up. It's just that the back end of last season has a bit of a 12-13 thing where Liverpool hit on a new formation. There's a few sort of new players who've settled in and things like that, and suddenly it starts to feel like there is a bright future there, and that hope comes back. And I just remember at the start of 13-14, once Liverpool had sort of won a couple of games, just being really, really full of hope that it was going to be a great season. And again, that wasn't me preempting where it was going to end up. I just thought Liverpool looked like a serious football team, especially going forward. And I think there's so many parallels to draw between that. Is that even in the points where it was going, I say wrong, it didn't go majorly wrong, as Josh said before on Sunday. But even in the moments now where it looks like, so when West Ham get their goal back and when West Ham have a chance and things like that, last season that would have felt terminal to me. Last season I've been like, I'm really panicking now because this team have done nothing to prove to me that they're going to stay in this game, that they'll fall away, they'll be discouraged, they'll encourage opposition too easily. I'm not seeing any of that in this Liverpool side anymore, and I think that's the thing that sort of excites me most and gives me the most hope.
On to McAllister then. You said before, Josh, we're still not sure about him as a specialist in that role. I just don't think he is a specialist in that role. I think that's all right. And you got to see, I think, both the strengths and the weaknesses of him in that role. He gets the assist for the Nunez goal in there. It does feel a little bit like he may well want to go higher, but he can see the range of the pitch. He can see where he is. He can work out where he's up to. The flip side is, there is a pace on the turn question around him, and I think that's always going to be there. But it's obviously more marked when he's in the area of the pitch that he's in. I'm impressed with him in general. I think but simultaneously, I thought he had a bit of a sticky first half.
Yeah, I've got no overwhelming concerns about McAllister, to be honest. I think he's, again, like a solid addition going back to the summer, and I think no matter where you use him in the midfield, as long as he's playing somewhere in the centre, I think he'll be a positive contributor generally. I think he's showcasing the pros and cons of using a player like that as the whole midfielder, essentially, because he's got more of a passing range, and he's probably got more of a creative spark through him compared to the typical six. Like, I think his assist, for example, for Nunez, maybe I'm doing him a disservice here, but I can't see Caicedo making that pass just, off the top of my head, like. But then in certain moments, because he does have that attacking nature to his game, I think he is also maybe a bit too... I think he's inclined to take a risk, basically. And I think some of those have resulted in those conceding turnovers, and his recovery pace isn't great. We've conceded a few shots on the back of that. But overall, I think the nature of how he is, he's probably the most of a holding player compared to all his peers at Liverpool. Like, Curtis Jones wants to run. Gravenberch wants to run. Szoboszlai wants to run. I think McAllister is a bit more of a sitter. And... He really does play the game at his own pace, and I love that, considering like the Liverpool team that we've currently got as teammates, they're all so attack minded and so relentless with this accelerating the game stuff. McAllister is a lot more, I will play at my own. It's like a Manchester City pace, to be honest, the way he plays. So I think it's benefiting us in certain moments and probably hating us probably less so, to be honest, in certain other moments. But I think some people at the game, for example, I heard kind of getting on his back a little bit, and I don't think we're anywhere near that level of criticism.
Oh, it's wild, frankly.
Yeah.
At this point, given where he is, Neil, I think that's an absolutely wild shout.
I'm surprised to hear that.
Yeah. I'm quite surprised as well. It's sound by me, though. You know what I mean? Unlike where Josh is, there is, but there is. I think there is a little bit. For me, I would just a couple of times. And I think it's interesting. There was a point in the second half, and I thought he and everything worked best in the second half. But there's a point in the second half where both him and Robertson tried to be aggressive at the same time and tried to go and win a ball. That was just never quite there to win, and both of them were real optimists about it. We'll get there. And West Ham played two nice little bits of play. Almost certainly Paqueta was involved, and then they were turning around and coming the other way at us. But I think he is an optimistic footballer. He's a footballer who feels as though he can make things happen, Neil. I think you've got to take that tiny bit of rough with a lot of the smooth that we're getting, and I think he's part of how we dictate the play second half before you even talk about the assist.
Yeah, definitely outbalances any negatives. There's a ball he tries for Salah in the first half that nearly comes off. He slides one through to Mo. He's got that eye for a pass. Obviously, the lack of recovery pace. He's not slow by any means, but he's not rapid. Sometimes he's not going to get out to his fullback. I'm not sure if it's the Antonio chance where there's a few of them crowded around Kufal. I think Virgil stepped out and doesn't quite get there. McAllister's around there. I think Jones too. And I was a bit disappointed with 3 red shirts surrounding a one West Ham player that nobody could block the cross coming in. So I think when things go wrong, you're naturally going to look at your 6 and you're going to concentrate on his defensive abilities and think about, well, could he have brought us more in that capacity? But that would be ignoring all the other positive aspects of his game. I think you can see how Thiago could be the player, if ever finally fit, who would swap in for him and could perhaps play that role in a similar manner, especially at Anfield. But I do think needs of must, really. We've had to deploy McAllister there, and I think you have to say he's done a really good job overall when it's not really what any of us thought was going to be his role when he first came through the door.
What helps is the all-action performances of Jones and Szoboszlai, Josh. I think Jones is all action until he's absolutely knackered and needs to come off. Szoboszlai may never tire. It's
still running now.
I was going to say that.
It's outrageous what you see from him. Not just the idea that the movement's perpetual, but he's also so quick. And the two of them are both excellent. They're not bruisers. They win it back so neatly, so controlled. I thought both, second half especially, but throughout the whole game, I thought both were the business.
Yeah, and you can see a world in which Jurgen Klopp sort of looks at them two in particular as the fulcrum of his midfield going forward because of the sort of hard yards they put in, and I'm so impressed in particular by Curtis Jones in that sense. But to be honest, I'm completely, as Neil was saying before, bowled over by Szoboszlai as well, because he's just not the player that I thought he was gonna come in and be, and that's honestly like the best possible compliment I could give to him, and I thought he was going to be, not a luxury footballer, but something sort of similar to Nunez' first season, where it is that explosiveness. It's big moments, long shots from far away and things like that. But he's so not that. He's got legs for days, as we're all saying there. There's so much sort of endurance to his game, and Liverpool have turned Curtis Jones into that player as well. And I think Liverpool, the coaching staff in particular, deserve credit for that, because particularly people like me who saw Curtis playing in the under-21s when he was a part of Gerrard's team and things like that, he just seemed like he was something sort of close to an inside forward, or something maybe a little bit like what Luis Diaz looked like last season. There was so much skill to his game. He was always looking to beat a man, and he can use those attributes of his game to his advantage still. There's still so much skill that he possesses and can use in moments. But the coaching staff and the work they've done with him has made him such a well-rounded midfielder. And I think that West Ham midfield that Liverpool's midfield comes up against is probably one of the most well-rounded midfields that they'll play against this season. It's not sort of Champions League level of quality. I think Lucas Paquetá is Champions League level quality, but they've just got a little bit of everything in that midfield, with the sort of guile of Ward-Prowse. It feels unfair to call Souček just a Grok, because there is actually so much more to his game. It feels like David Moyes has sort of found his Fellaini replacement in there.
He's so Fellaini. And the way he used him is so Fellaini. And I mean, there's a compliment. I loved Fellaini. I thought he was such a nuisance, so hard to deal with. If Souček's 90% Fellaini, and I think he's having a bit of a resurgent season, but he's so Fellaini.
He is so Fellaini, and that's why I think that Liverpool midfield does. It feels unfair to say they struggle first half. I think the West Ham midfield probably has slightly the better of them in the first half, but then it's almost like Jurgen just tells them to sort of let the shackles off second half. Everyone advances forward a little bit more, and I think Szoboszlai is the leader of that. He almost needs to be the one that is the highest up and says, I'm going to set my stall here, you can sort of fall behind from there and protect me. And second half, all three of them I thought came off the pitch with so much credit.
Jones' goal disallowed. I thought Jones's movements, both when Liverpool had the ball and when Liverpool didn't, all the way through the game, Josh, was absolutely tremendous. Constantly making line-breaking runs. Often doesn't get it first half. They don't use him, but it's pulling West Ham players all over the place. And Jones is frustrated, but he's still doing something that really helps the team, because you could see West Ham going, well, when he does that, who goes with him? Because we've got this front three to deal with at the back. The midfield's worried about Szoboszlai as well, to a degree in there as well. Gomez is being clever, Robertson's being clever, and you just left Jones is just buzzing around, and as I say, I think at times he was a bit like, listen, I was in there, you should have played it, but he was really disruptive for them, and then out of possession he was harrying everything.
Yeah, he looks like a proper product of the Liverpool academy since Klopp has came in. Since Klopp's had an influence on the kids and what these players should look like to play for me, Jones looks like a proper version of that, in terms of just being so intense, energetic, physical, direct, loves to press, all that sort of stuff, all that good stuff. And I thought he was brilliant in the game. 96% of his passes were completed. That's a stat that I prepared earlier. But yeah, he offers so much glue in the final third, and that despite playing in these really confined spaces. And he's got a goal in him, as we saw. And by the way, the assist for that goal that was disallowed, absolutely outrageous, just come out of nowhere from Szoboszlai and sums him up as well.
That they're passing to each other in that area is one of the things that I think is exciting about them. Yeah. It's the quality of it, but also, you know, Jones, literally by virtue of the fact that he's offside, we can say this ends up furthest forward. He's made the line break and run again, and this time he's just gone a little teeny little bit too early. But the quality, and also he knows to look for him, and in inverted commas, they've swapped sides. They've swapped sides for it as well. So that idea, there's that much fluidity, that much quality, that much intent from them. They're not just protecting Allister, they're not just winning it back. They're capable of all this as well.
Well, to be honest, it felt very De Bruyne to Gundogan as like the 2-8s for City, and one's penetrating the box and trying to get in the back stick, and the other one's putting like the finest, most elegant delivery into the back stick. So yeah, just what they're both offering as a duo. They're doing a lot to keep everyone else out the team in terms of those roles. And I think, say for example, we did get a proper 6 in, I would worry for where does Allister get minutes. And obviously you've got Gravenberch, you've got Elliott, but Jones and Szoboszlai for me have those 2 spots nailed down. I think again you've got to throw in there about Nunez too. I think Klopp said after the game, I thought it was interesting that, like, you know, accommodating Nunez and finding a defensive place for him. He was talking about Nunez improving on that side of the game, but specifically mentioned the way in which we defend with Szoboszlai and Jones, and how they kind of press in a really flexible way allows us to accommodate Nunez, who's maybe a bit more raw on that side of the game. So just complete total all-rounders, the pair of them. And they're still both 22 as well, which is just outrageous.
The Szoboszlai all-rounder aspect, I think it's what Josh is getting at before as well, Neil, is the thing that's so striking. You know, genuinely, before this argument, or not even the argument, if there was a need for it, if he just suddenly started playing number 6, I wouldn't go, this is mad. I'd go, okay, yeah, I can see how this could work. You know, he just looks like genuinely Alisson and 10 of him would be some football team. And it's a crazy thing to say given the fact that it's still only 6 league games, but that's how consummate he looks in his performance.
Yeah, he's so calm.
Yeah,
that's the thing that struck me about him, is how calm he is in every situation. I think it's about 3 or 4 minutes in, he's like juggling the ball in the own box, in our box on his head, and like heads it back to Gomez, I think it is, who's like, all right. You know? And there was a couple of instances like that during the game where, you know, he was in very tight situations and other players would panic, but he never looked stressed. He's telling his other teammates, he's giving all the hand gestures to calm down. You can see we've got a leader here, of captain of his country. And then he's just able to showcase his full repertoire of tricks as well. The back heel in the first half to Mo down in the corner where he takes out 2 players. The ball's bouncing, I think. And then I think there's a second back heel. He pulls it off again in the second half. His range of passing. We're yet to see him score one of his sort of trademark free kicks, but I think that'll come. You know, he's obviously trying to punch it, isn't he? And I think there's probably, if you're trying to punch it, if you're trying to hit a free kick like that, there's probably more chance of it either slamming into the wall or flying in. You know, he's not just lofting it over for the keeper.
You won't see many bigger walls either.
No, that's true. But you know, you're not just lofting it over for the keeper to easily claim. He's trying to do something very difficult there. His pressing, his ability to chase back and, you know, always double up. He's just got it all. If you don't want to get carried away, we keep saying, you know, you can't really get any more carried away than comparing him to Steven Gerrard, which everybody has done for weeks now. So I think the horse has already bolted. But he's a sensational footballer, and he just looks like he could seamlessly fit in anywhere we ask him to. What more could you ask for? What a signing!
I think one of the interesting things about Szoboszlai so far is he's so intense on the defensive side of the game, covers so much ground. Quite obviously a product of Red Bull and things like that in that way, but he doesn't have the typical characteristic on the ball of those kinds of players, if you know what I mean. And so, like, when you think of a player who's so intense defensively, usually when they get the ball, the pulse is so high that they just force it.
He strokes it, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's got such elegance and coolness about when he has the ball, but then immediately when he loses it, it's like a flick of a switch. Like, if you think of, again, if you go back to Gerrard just did everything on the defensive side, just relentlessly running everywhere and that. And when he would get the ball, it would sometimes be equally direct, to the extent where sometimes, maybe not later in his career, but in his peak, especially when he was 22, you'd maybe have to put your arm around him and say, listen, calm down.
Yeah, I was going to say, he definitely didn't have the same measure of calmness. That's the big contrast.
Szoboszlai's got such a perfect balance considering he's 22. It is crazy.
Okay, Matip and Gomez, both proving people wrong in the former's case, which is always lovely to see, because Antonio's a lot to handle, Josh, Sexton, and I feel as though Matip, you never get him. You never get players the quality of Antonio, of Bowen. Our forwards going the other way. You can play well against them for 30 minutes and they only need to do one thing well, and everyone can look a bit daft. But I felt as though insofar as you can control and constrain Antonio and Bowen, Antonio more so, I thought Liverpool did a really, really good job. And both Matip and Gomez were part of that, but I thought Matip in particular in the early part of the game showed a ton of aggression.
Yeah, and they look like two footballers to me, and I think sort of Matip in particular, in that Joe Gomez has been written off quite a lot in his Liverpool career, but it's always with the caveat of everyone thought there was a good football there. So if at any moment a good footballer comes out of Joe Gomez, everyone sort of suspected that anyway. And when he has his good moments, I almost think he probably doesn't get enough credit for the good moments because everyone knows how good a footballer's in there. With Matip, I think people, including me as well, Neil, to be honest, maybe thought he was a little bit done as a Liverpool defender. He was not the sort of Liverpool defender that I wanted Liverpool to be relying on for large parts of this season. And he looks a bit to me like someone who's almost heard that and relishes that challenge of proving people wrong now, because there is a sort of aggression to his game that I think he definitely didn't see last season. I don't know how much you sort of saw it in season before Matip, in that there was always the sort of mazy run in there, but at times the mazy run wasn't such a sort of aggressive football play as much as a searching football play. It was like, I'm just going to run with it here and see how far I can get with it, and if I can do something with it that helps Liverpool in the sort of attacking quarter, then that's a good thing. It feels like now there's been a couple of times he's done a mazy run already this season, and it looks like he is sort of saying, no, I know this is a skill I've got in my arsenal now, and I'm going to utilise it, and I'm going to use it to Liverpool's benefit. But then more than that, it's the sort of physical battles, because it's one of the things I've been worried about with Matip in particular, and it's where I'd always sort of want to see Konate in there, and still, to be honest, I still would rather have Konate in there for physical battles. And if you'd have said to me at the back end of last week, it is going to be Matip in against West Ham and against Antonio, I'd have been worried about that. And as you say, West Ham, I said it before about the chances, they're still going to make their chances. Antonio's still going to have his moments of being a menace. You're never going to be able to shut him or them down completely. But if you wanted a sort of close to perfect way of shutting them down, Liverpool pretty much do that.
The good thing about facing Antonio is there's no surprises. He's going to be Mikel Antonio. He's not going to become a different footballer very, very quickly.
Backing into you all day, isn't
Yes,
it?
but I think that sort of suited Matip and Gomez. Again, we'll just sort of stay with Matip for a second, move on to Gomez in a minute. But I felt as though, basically Matip knows if I'm getting picked, this is what I'm dealing with. He's going to pull my side. He's going to look to get me over here. He's going to look to do this, So what am I doing? And I do think that sometimes that helps a defender. Like, I know exactly what this is. I've experienced it before. All right, let's go. That's what it's going to be. And I thought Matip, that experience element, I actually think you got to see. Not just the idea of aggression, but also knowing when it is there to be won and when he's being clever. Yeah. When's my turn coming, and being able to wait for that turn. It's not just as simple as going through him every single time.
That experience point's key for me, because when you come up against West Ham, certainly under David Moyes, they're going to push everything to the limits of the law. And, I applaud them for that. But in terms of the physicality, especially when it comes to set pieces, when they throw it up in the air, and there's been times in the past where we've been burnt, we've conceded, and I hate it when Liverpool concede a goal and you're seeing maybe Allister throwing his hands up in the air, a defender throwing his hands up. They're all complaining that it was a bit rough, it was a bit unpleasant. Well, that's coming. And Matip, Matip knows that's coming. It happened time and time again. So I love the fact that yesterday there was a few occasions where it was Antonio who was on the turf appealing to the referee, moaning, when Matip had almost gone over the top of him, really. Smashed over the top of him, won the ball. And it's like, well, if these are the rules, you want to play by these rules, well, deal with it, dickhead. And, Antonio was lying on the turf and Matip had won it. Matip had said, well, I'll take you on at your own game. And it was the aggression that we saw from him all day. It was
the pick in the moments
as well. Picking the moments when to do it. You've got to be clever, you've got to be smart. You can't do it every time. But obviously Antonio's downfall yesterday is so delicious for so many reasons. But I loved it. It was Matip who really did win the day against him, and Gomez, winning so many of the headers, so many of the duels, being right on it from the start and coming out of the game with immense credit.
Gomez does come out with immense credit. It's fascinating for me, Josh, in terms of getting to see what confidence can do. He's still at times going into midfield here and there. It was all a little bit, he was doing the inverted thing. And he isn't Trent Alexander-Arnold, in that he's not going to dictate the whole of the game from that position and ping 70-yard balls or really snappy 10-yard balls when the time's right. However, he got to be a version of himself, and he got to be something, he can't be Trent, but he can maybe be something approaching John Stones in that role, but he's got to have confidence to do that. You've got to, the manager and the player, they've got to, between them, get that confidence in them. And again, I thought you got to see that confidence growing within him?
Yeah, I think you've just touched on a crucial element there in that he has to be himself in that role. If he's going to be used as an inverted fullback, there's no way he can have Trent anywhere near his mind, because he's not going to be able to play like that. And I think, to be honest, when the tactic was initially introduced, I don't even think the plan really was for Trent to become this quarterback. I think that's just Trent. Trent is interpreted that way, but I think if you look at the other ways in which our rivals, for example, are using the inverted fullback role, it's not for those reasons. It's for, to remain compact on the defensive side, to offer an extra body in the middle of the park, to open up the passing lanes to the wide man. And I think if Gomez just plays it simple, a bit like a Zinchenko maybe, or a Stones,
or a Joel Veltman. I mean, this is the thing to point out. Joel Veltman's been doing it for Brighton.
Yeah. Just drifting into the middle, opening up a passing lane to Salah and giving the ball. You don't have to be particularly elaborate on the ball. And I think the first time in which we saw it was Wolves when he played that role. Did he play that role at Wolves?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think when we first saw it, I was initially a little bit worried. Worried. I think just because he did look a little bit of a fish out of water, but obviously there was reasons behind it. On that day, we had tired players. It was nearly kick-off, just had an international break and things. He looked more comfortable in this game, and I do think it's something that you'd want to avoid ideally. And I think I would prefer to see Bajcetic there in a lot of games, simply because of what he offers on the ball compared to Gomez. But I think generally, in this game in particular, he kind of showed that he is an option there when we need him to do it. And if he plays within himself, if he plays to the level where he's comfortable, we can get by just fine and still get the perks of the midfield box.
While he can't play the ball like Trent, he has got that athleticism and that ability to surge. He did his best Matip impression at one stage, didn't he? Where he turns, sidesteps the defender, rides the challenge, surges through the middle. West Ham don't know what to do. You can see.
I just wish he'd gone pen spot. Yeah. I was like, he goes edge of the box, and I'm like, lad, you just go. Honestly, I could see it all in front of me. The moments that we'd love to see. I just thought, just keep going there. Go pen spot. See if you can get something in the 6-yard box. You just go.
But he pushes it out to Diaz, and as it is, Diaz gets a good chance to put a ball in. So it's fairly simple.
I didn't want him to carry the ball. I want him to lay it off to Diaz and then head it into the back of the net. That was the move
and finish it.
That was my turn of events that I wanted to see play out. That was the sequence I had in mind. Just on it, Neil, in general, the manager, we've got to be careful with this because we've seen it in the past, the speed with which it can flip. But right now, he'll feel as though he's got some options / riches in terms of what he's doing in defence. We're going to talk about the Leicester game in a minute, but I can imagine it being quite different again. It can turn quickly, that, and it's worth saying that, but the thing with the flip side of the injury crisis, when you have an injury crisis, it's dead hard to get out of one because you're overplaying everyone because you're in an injury crisis. The flip side of this is if we can, and I think this is why he's being patient with Konate, if we can just ensure we're getting the players to be as fit as possible continually, the options remain. Right now, it looks like he's got genuine options.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge if you can say to Gomez and Matip, you can have a midweek off here, you can have a weekend off here. We all know the stresses on them. If ever they're forced to play 3 games, and that was the issue last season, especially with the midfield. When we're asking Jordan Henderson to go for the 3rd time in a week, the results of that. We've seen it over and over again. But as you say, there aren't the same stresses. We're able to rotate and keep the fresh, and we're doing the same with the forward line, aren't we? Because our forwards need managing too. I mean, Jota's had some issues with injuries and his body breaking down. Nunez, it seems, his minutes, for all he's been so impressive in terms of his goal contributions per minute, he still needs managing, doesn't he? The manager's managing Darwin Nunez very cleverly, subbing him, using him sparingly, and we're able to do that with the defence at the moment, which is perfect. So we've got ourselves into a really good place, and I love how buoyant Jurgen was. I love the fact that he came to the Kop and gave it the fist bumps at the end as well. That you could see, and again, it was a big result. It meant a lot to the manager, and the mood music's just great around the club.
Okay, we'll be back to discuss the attacking options and the game coming up against Leicester after this clip from Post-Match Pint. Szoboszlai, Stu, it's just another consummate performance. There's no outstanding moment that you're looking at or anything like that, but everywhere he needs to be, everything he wants to be involved in, everything that you want him around. I can't believe how responsible he is. He genuinely plays like he's 28, and I genuinely mean that as a compliment. He plays like, I'm just controlling all this. I've got my eye on this, I've covered that, don't worry about that. You go and do your thing over there. I'm a gog. He genuinely looks like he'll be playing for Liverpool for 5 years.
Yeah, he's an incredible player. I mean, I'd say apart from maybe the first game, Chelsea away, I'd say he's run every game, every midfield, every game since. He looks like he's been playing the league 5 years. He looks way older than his years. Thank God he's ours. And you know, I think he's almost now like the poster boy for this new Liverpool team. It's so exciting. But every time he gets the ball, wherever he is on the pitch, he could be 30 yards inside his own box. Inside his own half. And he can see a pass. He can see an absolute killer pass. And you know, we've got the players in the wide areas to make the most of that as well. He's an unbelievable player. He's never getting subbed, is he? You notice that? He's never getting subbed.
Josh, the breadth of attacking options. Subs have scored in the last 3 games. I think it's worth pointing that out. I'm including Elliott because it's cruel not to, and also he ends up with the crowd. You know, if you get the yellow card for excessive celebration, I'm counting it, and we're going to go from there. So subs have scored in the last 3 games. It's such a move to be able to make. You know, you think about, for instance, that game at Wolves, Elliott, Nunez and Diaz all come on and all make a massive contribution. For me, we'll get on to what he should do next, but the other thing that strikes me as well is that everyone understands it. For now, at least it feels like everyone knows. But the good thing about coming on is the opposition are tired. There'll be more opportunity. You can assert yourself, and that's what I think you get to see. I think it is, as a range of attacking options, I think literally the history of Liverpool Football Club may never have had it better.
Yeah, and Neil's right to say that the manager is sort of dealing with it all perfectly as well, because I think there's almost been times with Jurgen Klopp where when Liverpool have had big squads, he's probably got in his own head a little bit about how he manages a big squad. I remember when he first came into the club and he almost said himself, I don't like dealing with big squads. I love the players. I don't like dealing with disgruntled players. And I think over time he's probably surprised himself in the way that he's sort of found that he can manage manage having a bit of depth. And I think this season may well be almost the sort of breakwater for that in terms of, I think particularly in terms of the sort of front 5 or front 6 if you want to throw Ben Doak into there, or 7 if we're throwing Harvey Elliott into there, or 8 if you're throwing Szoboszlai into there, because I'd love to see Szoboszlai sort of keep being further forward in a couple of these games. It does just feel like Liverpool have so many good options there, and I think the 3 that are starting at the moment are perfect in terms of giving Liverpool this real sort of impetus and a directness and a pace that sides are going to more and more struggle to deal with, and more struggle to feel like they can just get at Liverpool early because they're going to be worried about what's coming back the other way now. But I think in a way it suits Gakpo and Jota for that to be the case as well, in that if this Liverpool machine gets rolling, and it already does feel like it is rolling to an extent, but if it continues to roll along at the pace it's rolling along, I honestly don't think those 2 footballers end up being left behind. I think actually it gives Gakpo a nice bit of time to sort of figure out what his position is. There will be games in there because there's the Europa League, and we hope that the sort of League Cup will continue as well, and he gets to figure out his position. And it suits Diogo Jota down to the ground, in that Diogo Jota gets to come in again in this game in the weekend and grab his goal and keep sort of having that confidence. And then it doesn't feel like there's as much stress around his position as well, because Jota is almost the one where I still don't really know which is his best position across the front 3 for Liverpool, in terms of, there's different players you can play him with across that front 3, but which one actually suits him the most, and who are his partners that suit him the most as well. He doesn't have to worry about that when he's coming on against the West Ham team who've been legged everywhere basically for what is it, 70 odd minutes, 60 odd minutes, and then he gets to come on and have his goal too, and have the sort of confidence of that. So I do think the manager is dealing with it perfectly.
It's the rotation, the freshness, Josh, the ability to do it a little bit differently and to start in different ways. Now listen, I actually think that Sunday's starting 3 will be the 3 for the next 2 league games, and then they might reassess the other side of the international break. But I think the idea of the 2 aways, the direct running, the idea that they make it a nightmare as to where you set your line, I think it'll suit them. I actually thought he'd hold Nunez back, although I thought he was great against West Ham. I thought he'd hold him back. I thought he'd play Diaz, hold Nunez back, and then unleash him on Tottenham away and Brighton away. I think they will be the starting for those games that are to come. But the idea of, well, he could surprise Postecoglou, he could surprise De Zerbi, he could surprise us, he could surprise the players themselves, or he might have a plan for them. That's what I think is genuinely exciting. I'll say it again, it is such a range of attacking talent to be able to call on.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what we said at the top of the show, to be honest, in terms of Liverpool coming on strong towards the back end of games. I think it goes back to one of the massive impacting factors on that is just the changes Klopp's able to make. There's no real drop. Like, it feels like his original team with like Mane, Salah, Firmino and that, and it felt like there was legitimate second strings and first teamers, and
oh yeah,
it was obvious, wasn't it? And I think now it's just kind of like, it's like a conveyor belt really. There's no real drop in standard between any of them, and Such a high level. And I think the three that you've just mentioned, I think they're probably the three that are the most difficult to defend against, I would say, from an opposition perspective. They're the most threatening, I think. I'm not sure if they're the best on the defensive side, because I think you can go with a better defensive three, and that's why it'll be interesting to see if Klopp trusts Nunez against Brighton in particular. Brighton's game building from the back is as good as I've seen, and they really baited Liverpool last season in terms of just enticing the press and just literally walking around as it was embarrassing at times. And I think going into this game, Liverpool, De Zerbi to an extent will be licking his lips if he can get it right, because if you can entice a team to come onto you and play around them, that's vintage De Zerbi, and Liverpool will obviously want to press, so the way in which we get that right is going to be crucial, really. And if you've got Nunez in the team, who Klopp has touched on as being still needing to work on that element of his game, that will be an interesting one to follow. But in terms of the attack, I agree with you in terms of them three being the three biggest firepower that we've got, essentially.
There's, for me, on it, Neil, going to where are we up to, what's the overall picture, even comparison to ambition to the start of the campaign. For me, the big thing is this: we've got the best goalkeeper and the best attack in the league, and we had that on day one. We've got the best goalkeeper and the best attack. We've got the best 5 attackers, and we've got the best goalkeeper. Now, City have got Haaland, and he's incredible. They've got De Bruyne, he's incredible. So they're very, very close to us, and also Ederson's a really, really good goalkeeper, and they've got a lot going on. But I look across the rest of the league, and I'm going, well, I'd rather have our goalkeeper, and I'd rather have our attackers. So if we can sort these other bits out, that's brilliant. Goalkeepers had his praise a lot recently, but for me, those 5, and I thought Gakpo was excellent when he came on as well. Really, really good, really sharp. Jota gets the goal, kills the game. You just go through this over and over again. I thought Diaz had a bit of a frustrating day, but you'd never want to play against him, and he makes what you do difficult. And I just think Nunez to me looks like a genuine version of a way you'd draw a centre forward if you were an 8-year-old. That's. And I mean that with the greatest love and respect. The way an 8-year-old draws a house is what a house should look like. The way an 8-year-old will draw Darwin Nunez is what centre-forward should look like.
He just needs to unleash that ponytail.
Maybe after the goal.
As soon as he lets the hair down, then,
That's what he should do on a 92nd minute winner. Is not the shirt, do the hair.
Then he's the rampaging Batistuta of my dreams. Of my childhood dreams.
No, it is. There's Batistuta, there's Vieri, I said before, there's Drogba. Yeah. There's a specific type of footballer that I think he reminds you of. Yeah. And it is football Italian. It is something that has elements of the exotic, but is also a street fighter at the same time.
He needs to keep wearing the black boots as well. There's something about the black boots, mate. Yeah. It's just perfect. When he's got the white ones on, he doesn't play as well. I don't care what you say to him, he just doesn't.
Exactly. No, that's what it is. It's a throwback whilst also simultaneously feeling like the most modern thing on the pitch.
Yeah, and I said earlier, slightly tongue in cheek, but there was something Zlatan Ibrahimovic about the finish as well. The ball coming over, the outstretched boot. He's such a physical presence, constantly. He's asking so many questions, but he does have some really good ability too. I mean, the chance he misses is frustrating because it's such great build-up play. Mo's slipped him in, and he's just, I don't know if he snatched at it, but it flew wide of the post, and I couldn't believe it, really. I was sure it was a goal, before he hit it. But I watched Haaland recently, and Haaland's a player as well who sometimes misses chances that, you boggle at, really. There was a game against the Red Star Belgrade where he missed a hatful. There was a league game before that, I think. I'm not sure.
West Ham, when they played West Ham, he misses 2 or 3 really good opportunities again, where the ball's dropping to him and you go, goal.
Of course.
And that goal, scored that, oh God, he hasn't. And it's more, oh God, he hasn't, than the ball's hit the back of the net.
Yeah. But the point is, the next chance is coming, the next one's coming. It's the next cab off the rank, and that it'll score the next opportunity. And that's what Darwin did, yesterday. He misses the big chance, huge opportunity, and then he scores the harder one.
Yeah.
So his build-up play now, he's getting so much more involved. The way he's dropping deep, his build-up in the first goal for winning the penalty. He really does play his part. It's a good ball out to Diaz. And Diaz, you mentioned he probably wasn't at his very best yesterday, but he was still a constant threat, a constant menace. He hasn't quite played the right ball. You could see Nunez pointing exactly where he wanted it, slightly behind him, but he's just managed to steer it with the back of his trailing leg into Mo's path, and well-won penalty. That front three, there's so much potential. I can see the point when we go away, certain games like Brighton, we might need to think about, do we need the sort of cuteness, the defensive work from the front that Jota brings? There's definitely a case for that. But Darwin Nunez, whether he's starting now or coming off the bench, I'm just so excited to watch him play, because I do think, I've said it before, I said it on the show here with you a few weeks back.
Yeah, I remember it, yeah.
He takes us to another level. You know, Darwin Nunez at his best takes this team to another level, and I'm just delighted that we're beginning to see that.
I thought it was interesting. I thought Diaz actually got into one with Soufal, which sometimes happens. You know, you almost end up battling your fullback too much, rather than just sort of at times passing it past him. Instead, you go, no, I've got to beat him. I think Soufal's a really good player. I think he's quite good to watch.
He's got something about him, Soufal, where he seems to get into those battles every week, every single game. I think last week it might have been Doku for City. He loves them battles, and he's another one who's kind of a throwback. He's proper Moyes, isn't he, really? Yeah. He's proper Moyes fullback, like.
You know, as I say, I think he does almost turn it into this own bit of theatre that everyone's got to deal with, and that probably works for him more than it works for the opponent from time to time.
You'd probably rather that from Diaz, though, wouldn't you? Because I know you in particular, one of the sort of gripes you used to have about Diaz is that he'd almost be so far away from his fullback because he'd be coming in and turning inside too early. I think I'd rather him almost overstep the mark that way than becoming too much the other.
Yeah, but he was playing on the front line, not the midfield, and dropping away from him. Just last little thought on them, Josh, Sexton. I thought Zuma, Ward-Prowse, Paqueta and Bowen were all ace. You know, I think the worthy of genuine compliment in terms of the quality there. I just thought the four of them in particular I thought were terrific. I couldn't keep my eyes off Paqueta. I thought he was that good. He's
incredible, isn't he? It almost seems, I don't know if it's a shame for us as such that he didn't get his move to City in the summer. It's great for us that he didn't get his move to City in the summer. I think he'd really flourish there, and I think he's a better player than Matheus Nunes if that's the sort of option they've gone with, because they think the Paqueta move is done. He's a sensational footballer, and there was so much to admire about his game yesterday. Almost in a way, like I was almost watching him and Szoboszlai as like the two quintessential midfielders on the football pitch who had that little bit of skill. And Neil's talked about some of Szoboszlai's ones there. There was a couple that Paqueta did. There was one sort of on the near byline, it must have been by the managers, and he just completely kills two of our lads and carries it forward. And there's so much of that to his game, and that's what I said before about their midfield being so well rounded. It feels like he is almost the bow on that midfield, and you know, Ward-Prowse has come in and done an incredible job for them. The delivery's there, but it almost feels like it feels lazy to just talk about James Ward-Prowse's delivery, because I think there's so much there in terms of a Premier League midfielder, and I'm glad that he got his move back to the Premier League, because I think he'd be far too good for the Championship. And then Jarrod Bowen, like you say, I think the biggest compliment we as Liverpool fans can pay Jarrod Bowen is that if Liverpool do sell Mo Salah at some point, and Jarrod Bowen is one of a couple of players that they bring in, you wouldn't feel the worst about it. You wouldn't feel like, oh, we're going in a terrible direction here. He's a really, really good forward and can do so much across that forward line. He gives West Ham so many sort of different options. You see the different positions he pops up in and how much quality he brings to that team. And then Zuma is almost the perfect centre half for them in terms of he has got that little bit of ball playing ability, but he's so big and so strong as well. Really relishes those physical battles. Relishes being able to step into midfield and sort of, you know, have a man or almost, you know, hang off him as he does. So there's so much to admire about them. I'm just glad that Liverpool sort of gave them the respect that they deserved, but then also went and looked like an even more serious football team.
On Ward-Prowse, you say it feels lazy just to talk about his delivery. I'm going to be lazy.
It is so good.
It's almost like Rory Delap-esque, but with his feet instead at the throw-in. I can't remember the last time I've had that fear, that kind of Stoke fear, that, you know, when a corner was conceded. And worse than a corner, those free kicks.
Oh, I hate them.
Oh, they're the worst thing in football. It's where Madrid scored against us, isn't it, as well? Yeah. You know, last season, when it's just a few yards in.
I'm convinced Tim Cahill's going to score off them every single time. And he's not played a game of competitive football for 8 years.
But that's how it felt yesterday, isn't it? And when they won that one in the second half, you know, that he puts on Bowen's head and Virgil isn't able to prevent Bowen from winning the header. I mean, it's a big moment, obviously a huge turning point in the game, but his quality, James Ward-Prowse, it's astonishing really from those set pieces. This really is the apex of Moyes ball, isn't it? I don't think we've ever seen it done. If they could just dig Cahill up from wherever he is. He's not dead. I don't know why I use that expression. They don't need to dig him up. That was an odd turn of phrase. If they could just bring him back from retirement, then they really would have it all. That or Fellaini.
Absolutely. But they're doing the best they can with Souček. We'll move on to Leicester. I'm going to get you to do the team in a second, but I just want to start off talking about them. They'll probably rest players themselves, supposedly. I'm going to read direct quote from the inestimable Football League world, who said that meanwhile Maresca will also be looking to use a chance to give some other players a run out. Connor Cody could be in line with his debut. Hamza Chowdhury and Cesar Casadei may well also get a rare start. Vardy unlikely to feature after playing the majority of Saturday's win over Bristol. Iheanacho could start instead. McAteer, who's been all right for them, could be in there as well, and Mavadidi could also get in there in the forward line. They went a little bit stronger than that against Tranmere in the previous round. I had a look, Josh. They went a little bit stronger, but it's worth now saying they've now played 2 AFL Cup games and 8 league games. There was a midweek last week, which was arguably one of the defining games of their season. They beat Norwich 2-0 away, where I think they had to suffer a fair bit, but in the end, Dewsbury Hall's class saw them home. I think Dewsbury Hall could well be the best player in that division by a distance now that it's all shook out and settled. Though there's some good players at Leeds as well, but I'm of the view that these could well be good enough for 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th in the Premier League. And I don't think this will be easy. Even if he makes changes, I don't think this will be easy. I think this is going to be I think it'll be a good game, but I think it's going to be a real game at Anfield.
I think it depends what the team he goes for. Because as you say, he's got a packed schedule there, and he's got priorities to get back into the Premier League and things like that. So, and he's obviously got, if you think of it from a Leicester perspective, it's the Carabao Cup, and you've got a trip to Anfield. It is Anfield, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, that's proper underdog stuff. So does he really want to dedicate his most important resources to that game?
No, I think he'll make 4 or 5. I do think he'll make 4 or 5, but I'm still saying I still think they might be quite good.
Yeah, I think will obviously be a bit of a challenge compared to some of the teams you can face in that tournament, but I think Liverpool will have more than enough for this game, and I think the rotation that a lot of people expected to happen in the Europa League, I think will probably more than likely happen in this tournament more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I do think we'll see a lot of rotation. I think we'll still see a strong enough team to win the game comfortably. Not comfortably, but I think we'll see a strong enough team to win the game, and they'll still feature like a Harvey Elliott, and I think maybe Quansah might come in and players like that. But I think it'll be an interesting run out for a lot of players, but I think we'll have enough to get through in this one.
So, Kelleher, Quansah, Basetic, Shimikas, Endo, Gravenberch, Elliott, Doak, all start? We all in agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so who are the other 3 and what's the shape? Neil first, then the 2 Joshes.
A lot depends on Konate, I think, and where he is, in terms of his reintegration back into the team, because ideally I want him at the weekend away at Tottenham. So it might be one for Matip, this. Certainly, I think, or Gomez. I think one of them's got to fill in alongside Quansah, haven't they? And then I think Diogo Jota hates Leicester, famously. If this cup tie is half as good as the last one, they're in for a treat.
I can't live another one like that.
Never have I regretted giving up a ticket for a match, the week before Christmas, as much as watching that and thinking, it's best game of the season.
Me and Andy sat next to it. We were having a lovely chat first half, and second half we both have given organs to win. It was a very, very strange turn.
It was incredible, wasn't it? It just looked like one of those games where Anfield just turns into a furnace.
Yeah.
It's what you live for, isn't it? On a side note, after we scored our second goal yesterday and we were all over West Ham, there was that 5 minutes or so where you just think, this is what I live for. Yeah. This is what the week's all about. When you're on top, you've got the second goal, and we start pushing and pressing, and we're all over them, and that buzz. It's what we just love it. There's nothing like it. So some more of that on Wednesday, please. Gakpo looked really fresh when he came in yesterday, I thought, in his brief cameo, and I did think Jota was unfortunate not to add another, even though he scored one. So those two would round it off. I think it could be a really good game, like you say, maybe a close contest.
I think the front 3 is probably nailed on to be Doak, Gakpo and Jota, isn't it? That feels like the way you get your minutes into those 2. And like you say, you sort of have the idea in mind that the front 3 that played on Sunday is the front 3 that plays probably at least 2 of the next 3, if not all of the next 3 in the league. I wonder whether he'll want to sort of ride the crest of the wave with Matip and Gomez a little bit here, and that's where he maybe doesn't do the Bajcetic right back diddle again, like whether he brings Bajcetic into midfield or whether he just starts Endo instead of Bajcetic in this one. I could see a world in which he does Gomez right back again, with the view that on Sunday hopefully Trent will be back fit. Next Saturday Trent will be back fit, and then you bring Konate back in as Neil says, sort of depending on where he is up to. I just wonder whether you do sort of use them two as the listen. There's loads of lads there who play in the Europa League game, and you can almost say to them, the subs come on in the Europa League game, but you gave the foundation for us to go on and win that game. Just go and do the same here. Go and sort of be solid. Second half we'll come out again, and we can discover things from there. I just wonder whether he will sort of want to use that confidence of Gomez and Matip to build off that.
What do you think, Josh?
Well, I've just done a little team here just very quickly while he was talking. I'd go Kelleher in goal, and then I think Basetic will probably get the right back role. Gomez, Quansah and Tsimikas. Endo as the 6, Elliott and Gravenberch as the 2 8s, and a front 3 of Doak, Jota and Gakpo. And I think the only question mark with that would be whether you want to give Konate more minutes. rather than playing him in the Premier League like he did in we obviously given the minutes in the Europa League, didn't he? And if Canate comes in, that maybe plays with it a little bit, because then potentially Gomez goes on the right and plays the inverted fullback again, but then with his percentage play. So, but I think that will be roughly the team personally.
I think he'll use his bench, and I think he might use a half-time thing. It wouldn't surprise me if, if he's got a bit of a, like for instance, he might either start Canate and bring Matip or Gomez on for him at half-time, depending on what the team's been, or he might might do it the other way, where he starts Matip or Gomez and gives Canate 45. He's done that before in this competition. I think as well, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a little bit of Bobby Clark for Ben Doak around 60 minutes. A little bit of, if it's worth saying, it's now a long time since Trent Alexander-Arnold's played football. I think there could be an argument that you're getting half an hour of Trent somewhere in this as well. But then I think the flip side of that is, I think the one thing he could sort of do with is whether or not he might, and again as part of this, it wouldn't surprise me if he starts Gakpo or Jota and starts someone else, another young prospect or something. So he's got the option to either break glass if we want to chase it as it wears on, or to not overexert players and do 60s and 30s. So I think I don't think it's just an 11 here. I think he'll also have his ideal world plan for 16, if you see what I mean, that he can compromise around.
Yeah, well, I think that the Trent comment is an interesting one, obviously, because you've got to factor in, we've got Brighton coming up and we've got Spurs coming up, and you want Trent to ideally have some minutes on the clock before going into those two massive games. So I think I'm not sure he'll start, but I do fancy that he might get about half an hour if he's fit enough to do it. Like,
yeah, that's what I think. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And one of the things about starting a season as well as we have, because this has been brilliant. It's been absolutely brilliant. I don't know if I saw it come in, and I know we're all sort of keeping a lid on it, trying to keep a bit of a lid, but it's been brilliant this start to the season. Absolutely fantastic. Just week in, week out, we're playing some really good football, scoring loads of goals. It's the XG of title winners, I've heard. I'm enjoying every minute of it. And when the league campaign's going so well, then the cups become like a really lovely bonus, don't they? Chance to see different players.
Genuinely get excited for the team sheet an hour before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just something totally different. And I'm really looking forward to it. The post-match pint's going to be a good one.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Thank you very much to Neil, to both Joshes, Andy and Jordan, for producing in different ways. Liverpool have dug up their hopes of a fantastic season, but not like Tim Cahill. They never really went away. It's the Anfield Wrap.